Welcome everyone, this is Andre's Restart, and today we are talking about the problem I have with the supposed Nintendo Switch 2 reveal time. We don't actually know when the system will be revealed, but many believe, myself included, for a variety of reasons, most of which public, but not all, that Switch 2 is coming out next year. Now feel free to believe whatever you want in terms of when the next system will come out, but I think it's coming out next year. Very much so. However, I am not sure how Nintendo is going to handle this. I can't quite wrap my head around what is going to make the most sense for when Nintendo reveals this system. When I take a look at the few different scenarios, there's an issue I kind of have with all of them. And so I would like to talk about those with you today and also hear what you guys have to say on this, and perhaps we can come together and sort out what makes the most sense. But before going forward, let me point out that we are aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers, hopefully at some point during the year of 2024. So if you do enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. Leaving a like is also super helpful. And enjoy the ride as we talk about Nintendo every day. So with the assumption that Switch 2 will come out in 2024, here's the first scenario. There are some rumors suggesting that there will be a big January event revealing the system. And while I'm a little doubtful of the rumors, I could see Switch 2 coming out in the month of May. We look at how Nintendo handled the month of May for 2023, they released Tears of the Kingdom, and shortly before Tears of the Kingdom came out, a few weeks prior, they released the Tears of the Kingdom OLED, which also gave them a significant boost, not to mention the Mario movie came out around that time as well. So it was a very lucrative time for Nintendo, and especially with Tears of the Kingdom, it did extremely well for them. In the first 3 days, Tears of the Kingdom sold over 10 million copies. So the point to be made here is that Nintendo has already demonstrated that coming out with something late April, early May could actually be really fruitful for them. So could Nintendo, hypothetically speaking, have the Switch 2 ready with a really good game or two and produce similar results? Yeah, I think they could. Maybe 10 million is a bit of a stretch, but in terms of overall revenue, I think that they could come close to that for sure. And then that would leave them several months left in the year to build up a lineup, very similar to how they handled it with Nintendo Switch back in 2017. Switch came out, launched with Breath of the Wild, then in April was Mario Kart, then soon after we had ARMS, then Splatoon 2, then a few other smaller titles, then Mario Odyssey and Xenoblade Chronicles 2. It was a decked out year with games coming out consistently. And so I do believe that whenever Nintendo's next generation console does arrive, regardless of when that is, it will come out with a game or two. There will be some third-party stuff as well, but they will have a steady flow of consistent high-quality games coming out at least for the first year. Now, if you look at how Nintendo's handled things throughout the generation, droughts aren't really a thing anymore. Consistent releases is what Nintendo does now, so I don't think that's ever going to change for the Switch 2, or whatever comes afterwards. But what I mean is that I believe that first year or 2 years is going to have a consistent series of heavy hitters. So regardless of when the Switch 2 does come out, I think Nintendo's going to really push it and have a lot of momentum going into with every big game that comes out month by month by month. And so I'm fine with that. But the issue isn't release timing, it's reveal timing here. Because while I think a January to May window makes sense in terms of how they handled the Nintendo Switch initially, it was teased in October with the teaser trailer, big presentation in January, came out early March. It was a 4.5 month window, October 20th to March 3rd. So January to May would be very similar. I think from that perspective, it's very conceivable. But before we even got the teaser for Nintendo Switch, we at least knew that it was in development. We at least knew it was going to be announced soon, officially speaking, like from Nintendo. Nintendo told us about the NX, the codename for the Switch, as early as 2015, if I'm not mistaken. And so we don't have a codename right now. Now, I don't necessarily believe that we need to get a codename. I think in the past, when Nintendo would tell us about a codename a year to a year and a half in advance, this is a different Nintendo. This is back when Nintendo would have the DS and the Wii, or the 3DS and the Wii U. And so when one system was dying out, they would focus a little bit more on the other, and there would be a massive drought. And also, their slate of releases was not nearly as consistent. So Nintendo needed to do other things to keep the fan base engaged, to keep investors not as concerned. But nowadays, Nintendo's focusing on one platform, not two. And the games that are coming out are very consistent. It's every month pretty much, sometimes more than one game per month. And the turnarounds between announcement and release now are far shorter than they ever were for prior generations. Obviously, there's a few minor exceptions, but if we're talking about the overall average, it's dramatically shorter now than it ever was before. So I don't think there's a need to have this massive window between codename reveal, teaser, big presentation, big marketing lead up for about a year, then release. That's old school video game marketing. That's not how it works now. But while there is a history of events where we get info on new hardware, like January 2017 where we got the Switch presentation, and 2015 when Nintendo told us about the new Nintendo 3DS XL, I think with how hard Nintendo pushed holiday sales, a big January event shortly after feels like it could potentially be in poor taste. And also, there isn't a lot of credible sources out there that think January is when we're going to see this system. The Eurogamer reports, the Video Games Chronicle reports, they've suggested second half, and a lot of people speculated holiday. And while I don't necessarily think it has to be holiday, I think thinking that the system will come out before the second half of the year, it feels like a very optimistic perspective. It's not impossible, but I just don't think there's anything really saying for sure that's what's going to happen. And so because January is just a few days away, and there isn't any really strong signs of a January reveal, I just don't think we're there yet. Now, another scenario that feels more believable to me is a March reveal. That's been discussed by a few different people. That seems to be the expectation. There's no hard reports out there suggesting that March is when it's going to be revealed, but that seems to be kind of like the murmurings, the speculations, the expectation as the fiscal year is ending, so Nintendo can assure investors that 2024 is going to be a big year. And so I do think there's something to that thinking, and what I've been on the record as saying is I think we'll have official word from Nintendo about Switch 2 by the end of March 2024. But official word doesn't necessarily mean a big presentation. It could just be a mention in a financial Q&A. And what I find interesting is that a lot of people have been speculating that we'll see a reveal in March and the system will come out in, say, maybe September. And I love the idea of September because that's a little bit earlier. It's still fairly late into the year, so it's conceivable, but it gives Nintendo some months in 2024 to build up a lineup going into the holiday. And so I think that does make sense. But what's weird to me about the March to September window is that when we take a look at how Nintendo handled the Switch from teaser to presentation to release, that was a 4.5 month window. And March to September, that's a half-year window. It's a bit longer. Now, could they do that? Could they have an even longer window? They could build it up over time. That would be more old school video game marketing. But I don't think Nintendo is going to do that. That's not how they do things now. I think, if anything, it might even be more reasonable to predict an even shorter window between reveal and release than what they had for Switch. So I'm actually thinking that from the time we get like a big blowout of the Switch, like actual footage of what this system is, between release, it will be less than 4.5 months. That's what I think. I think that is the trend. So this idea of a March reveal to a September release, because I anticipate a shorter window, that doesn't make sense to me. Now, if March is just like a codename reveal, or Nintendo very subtly, or maybe not so subtly, suggesting that there could be hardware announcements in the year, maybe that's what happens in March. And so we could be looking at a first half of the year where there's not really a lot of information that Nintendo gives us. Not until summer. And I will say summer, I have a hard time believing Nintendo will go through January, February, March, April, May, not mention Switch 2 at all, then have June where we almost always have some sort of major influx of Nintendo news, and then still get nothing about what's coming beyond. But then let's say that's the case. Let's say that we get like a typical February Direct, and that's what it is. They announce games for April through June. Nintendo has a financial investors meeting, and they make some mention of new hardware coming out next year, or at least don't deny it finally. They leave it very open so people are like, oh yeah, they're finally opening the doors for it to happen. And then beyond that, we don't get much until a June Nintendo Direct. But maybe Nintendo even announces it a little bit more ahead of time than usual because it's meant to be a bigger presentation where they're going to have like a big Switch 2 next generation console Direct or presentation in June. And so perhaps they do that and the system comes out 3 to 4 months later, which would leave September as a likely candidate for the actual release time. But then the problem I kind of have with that one, and this isn't as big of a problem, is that I believe Metroid Prime 4 has been ready and has a really good chance to be coming out next year. But there will also be a big Pokemon release. And supposedly, according to Andy Robinson from Video Games Chronicle, 3D Mario will be the launch title for Switch 2, which I do think makes a lot of sense. 3D Mario is usually a big seller for Nintendo consoles early on. Outside of Zelda, it's like the ideal day one launch title. And so I've even speculated that maybe we could get 3D Mario in September, Metroid Prime 4 in October, and then some sort of major Pokemon release in November. They will be for Switch, but also maybe there could be like a Switch 2 patch or something like that. And maybe Nintendo throws in like a party game sometime in those months, and there will be some quality third-party releases. I do think that makes sense. But there are also a number of third-party games that seem like they could be coming to Switch 2. And yeah, they could bunch them all up into the end of the year, but there are some games I kind of think could be coming out sooner. Like the Fantasy Life game, for example, that mentions unsupported consoles outside of Switch, and that's coming out summer, a worldwide simultaneous release. But the other thing that I kind of already said that gets me about this idea about a summer reveal is that people expect a reveal in March. Which, if people expect a reveal in March, I think there are some oddities with that. So I'm just at a point here where I'm not certain what is the ideal time for Nintendo to reveal the console. I think whatever they pick, they can make it work, it'll be fine. And perhaps my biggest issue here is just that I think that there has to be a shorter window between reveal and release. Maybe they're not going to do that. Maybe they're not going to continue to trend in that direction. But I am curious what you guys think. So let me know in the comments below. This is Andres Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.